And so these are like the two main biggest fears, that people are going to be deficient in. And so I want to know, what do you do for B12 and vitamin D? And have you had a blood test recently? Do you worry about these things? What do you recommend?
Wow. Cool question, really. And I don't get tired of answering it. B12 is not exactly what most people think it is. But there's no food that contains B12, right? Like you don't get B12 from food. Let's start there. So we obtain what's called an extrinsic factor, which is a part of B12. We obtain an extrinsic factor from poop, from the excrement, from the eliminated waste, from more than 100 different kinds of microbes. Now, there's billions of kinds of microbes, but there's more than 100 that in their waste material, there is this extrinsic factor. That extrinsic factor somehow or another has to find its way into your intestinal tract in order to be absorbed. But before it helps if it can connect with the intrinsic factor that we manufacture, the other half of B12. Intrinsic factors is produced in what are known as parietal cells, a little patch of cells in a portion of your stomach. And they're called goblet cells because of their shape, but they're technically parietal cells. And there's just a little patch of them, like a little screen of them on the wall of the stomach, kind of like what you see in the pancreas for producing insulin, those little islet cells. So these cells manufacture the intrinsic factor. The extrinsic and the intrinsic hook up together, and now we have what we think of as B12. Okay. Which goes to the intestines in order to be absorbed into the bloodstream in order to do what's going to happen. Where does the extrinsic factor come from? It comes from microbes. Now, we've been taught to fear microbes, but we've also been taught that microbes are everywhere. In between my eyes and my computer, 16 inches in front of me, is a sea of microbes in the air, but I can't even see them because they're so small. But I can't even guess. There's trillions of them in my field of vision, right? And when I breathe in, every breath, I breathe in about 10,000 of them. So people have figured out there's a lot of microbes in the air. And your skin is coated in them. As is every mucous membrane in your body. So we have a few interconnected mucous membranes. One whole system is lined with mucous membrane. So from the inside of your nose and the inside of your mouth to the back of your throat where they connect, and then down your whole throat, this entire region is lined by mucus-producing cells. And they are coated in microbes. Most of that 100 different types of microbes are in that mucous membrane. If we want to, you could continue the mucous membrane, follow the track through your stomach, through your small intestine, through your large intestine, out the other end. And as most people know, the other end is also a mucous membrane. It's still lined on the inside with some mucus. And most people have heard that a fantastic large portion of each fecal mass that we produce is coated in mucus, and it helps hold things together and keeps it moving, because mucus Mucus is a membrane, is a substance that is designed to transport things through the body. So long answer, but the reality is that if I do this, I just took in a whole load of B12 from the mucous membranes in my nose, in my sinuses, in my throat. It's all there. And it's pretty easy to find. Which leads on to some interesting questions about B12, right? Because there's other mucous membranes that sometimes people will venture into that are also rich in B12. And I won't go there now, but I'll leave it up to your imagination. So that's part of the question. But to me, where do I get my vitamin D? I go outdoors. I mean, up until just recently, every nutrition book said somewhere between 95 to 100% of all the vitamin D that you get should come from sunlight. Only just recently have some nutrition books started changing that idea and telling you more about eating, animals that have vitamin D in them. But if you look at most nutrition books still, they're going to say somewhere between 95 to 100% of all the D you get, just go outside. That's all you have to do. It's done for you. But again, we're looking at isolated nutrients, and doesn't work that way, because even if you did go out in the sun, but you didn't get calcium, or you didn't go out in the sun, but you did get calcium, you can't utilize calcium without vitamin D, and calcium is in every cell of the body. The interesting part of the question for me is not these mechanical parts. The interesting part of the question for me is the philosophical part. You might get cancer of the nose. Should you have your nose cut off in advance? I would say no. You might go iron deficient. Should we supplement in advance of iron deficiency anemia symptoms? I would say no. As a trained individual, I would not say that it is prudent to supplement in advance of a problem. This is not even staving off the problem. This is actually creating other problems, and excess, oversufficiency can and is equally as much of a problem as deficiency. Playing chemistry with the body never works. So if you go to a doctor and say, I feel fantastically healthy, everything is working perfectly, I've never had better mind, body, spirit, everything is working like beyond my wildest dreams, should I supplement with something? And they do a bunch of blood work because they have to be thorough, and everything comes out perfect. And they go, oh, but you might go deficient. Maybe you should supplement with this, that, or the next. But no. And yet I understand that people get very scared because they hear, like, if you don't get enough vitamin D, you're going to end up with osteoporosis. It's a big deal, and it's a bad way to go. But if you don't strength train, you might end up with osteoporosis. I don't see everybody jumping on that wagon. And they go, oh, but B12 symptoms, if you get B12 deficiency, I mean, it'll create irreversible nerve damage. Well, yeah, after a few years of deficiency symptoms, you could eventually have irreversible problems. And there are people who do that. They tend to fall into two categories. They're either so abusive to their bodies, like street drug addicts, alcoholics, so out of touch that they didn't even realize that they had a B12 deficiency, or people who misunderstand health philosophy so badly that their health view is, I will never go to a doctor for anything under any circumstances ever. I'm always going to avoid the doctor at all costs. And those people can have symptoms that they ignore and not know what they are. Let's remember, one of the symptoms of B12 deficiency is confusion. But, if you've got tingling fingers and toes and you're losing some coordination and you're feeling a bit confused and your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're starting to get some minor auditory or visual hallucinations and things aren't right, that's not permanent nerve damage. You can reverse all that. Just start supplementing with B12. The cool thing is, if you think you have a B12 deficiency, what's it cost? A couple dollars to take some B12? Doesn't cost much to find out. If you supplement with B12 for a week or two and nothing changes, well, then it wasn't a B12 problem. It was something else. But I can't imagine supplementing with anything or everything in advance of having a problem. I do not see, that's not playing it safe. That's experimenting on yourself in a way that maybe you're creating other imbalances. Who knows? I don't know, but I know that the nutrients we need are in the food we eat, and the stuff that doesn't come from food. Sure, you get your B vitamins from food, but how do you lose them? You lose them with stress. So the B vitamins are known as stress vitamins. So maybe it's not that you need more B vitamins, maybe you need a little less stress. And that's an attitude adjustment, not a dietary one. There's a lot of things that are not about food, even for, we're more, can I say nuts? We're more concerned, we're more worried, we're more attentive to food issues in the raw food community than anywhere else. And we like to think, at least, that we're eating better than anybody else. And yet we're more worried about nutrients and nutrition and supplementing than anybody else. Like, I'd be worried about the people eating at McDonald's, not us.
The people, when you were eating Doritos, guys, you didn't care about your B12 or your vitamin D or your, whatever, your energy levels or whatever. So yeah, I agree, Doug. I completely agree. So I just want to wrap that up. What do you recommend for those with a B12 deficiency? What is the supplement or the protocol that you recommend?
This is a worldwide issue. Let's remember that B12 was first discovered, B12 deficiency was first discovered on carnivores, meat eaters. There were no vegans back then, really, or very few. That the first several 100,000 cases of B12 deficiency were all on meat-eating populations. That all the research done on B12 deficiency has shown clearly that if you have a B12 deficiency and you start eating meat, that will not help you in any way, because no animal makes B12. If you have a deficiency and you need to supplement in order to save your life or to save your health, by all means supplement. But then let's find out, why did you have this deficiency? What can we do to stop it from happening again? And let's remove the cause of the problem rather than treat the problem. Does that help? It's pretty simple, but it's generic and it works for everything. I don't know exceptions to that. I can't say, oh, yes, but except for zinc, I mean, no, it works for everything. If you're not showing deficiency symptoms, well, there's certainly no need to supplement. You're not going to save yourself from something that hasn't happened. Maybe it's never going to happen. It's probably never going to happen. You're eating the most nutritious foods you can possibly find. And by most nutritious, I need to remind people that most nutritious means not too much and not too little of anything. It's kind of like shoes. You want shoes that fit you. Bigger shoes isn't better. Bigger shoes aren't better. Bigger shoes aren't better. But more in the world of nutrition is not better. Lots of people have died from excess quantities of fat-soluble vitamins. Lots of people have gotten into lots of trouble with too much of this, that, or the next nutrient. And more does not equal better. Fruits and vegetables already provide us with the nutrients we need in the quantities we need them.